the stats that Allie listed, like you only been an agent for a little over 2 years and you already closed 74 and almost 23 million in volume. Could you rewind a little bit and tell listeners about before real estate and your real estate journey so far?
This is the Agent Goldmine, where you'll find real talk, and ambition. We're here to build real businesses and be more than your average agent. We want to know what the killers are actually doing within their businesses, the reality of it, all tactical, no fluff. So we're here to find out. Please share and enjoy. Kate Murphy, welcome to the Agent Goldmine podcast. We're stoked to have you. Dude, I want to go through your stats as you were inputting it, and I looked at them and you are so impressive. Everything from your stats to your microphone, you blow us out of the water. So we're excited to learn from you today, girl. Okay. So
thank you.
I want to start
to be here.
Thank you. Okay. Your market. You're in Fort Liberty, North Carolina, which I guess
sounds
was
weird.
Fort. Yeah. Right. Okay. Yeah. I thought so too. Fort Bragg. We'll just stick to them. Back in my day, we used to call it Fort Bragg. So you work with residential sellers and buyers. So this episode is going to be a great episode for newer to intermediate level agents because we're going to role play. I didn't even tell you that before we started. Girl, you and I are role playing. And so you've done, 74 transactions total with just shy of like 23 million in volume. And just in the past year, you've done 41 transactions with over 12 million in volume. And that's as a solo agent, where your like meat and potatoes of your business comes from, it's referral based, it's past clients. So I'm very excited to talk more about that and talk about the golden nugget that you're going to be providing, which is the buyer guide and the seller guide. Oh, okay. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Nope, my pleasure. Thanks for having me. This will be fun.
So fun. Oh my gosh. Yeah. And Kate, I have been stalking you on the internet for years now. You probably know this, but I love watching it because, I know a little bit about how, you were in the military for so long and you transitioned out and are an agent at Keller Williams. And dude, just the stats that Allie listed, like you only been an agent for a little over 2 years and you already closed 74 and almost 23 million in volume. So could you rewind a little bit and tell listeners about like before real estate and your real estate journey so far?
Yeah. Because I think they're connected. Before I came into real estate, honestly, the idea to start selling real estate came out of the blue. I still remember where I was in my neighborhood thinking, I could do that and work a full-time job at the same time, maybe just one sale every month or two. But at the time, I was an intel analyst with the Army. So did about 10 years on active duty and then contracted for another 7 or 8. And so I was an analyst and then an operations planner. And I thought, I could juggle both of those as long as it didn't get to be too overwhelming. And after about a year of doing both, I decided it was time to break away. And last year, 22 was the first full-time real estate year for me. And so this is year 2. Yeah.
Dang. So when you first got your license, you were in, the sphere of people that are moving, a lot of people don't have that opportunity, so that's awesome that you capitalize on that. Like you knew you're just able to do things. And I'm so excited. Okay. Anyway, so when you first started out, were you working with mainly buyers or sellers? And how did you get into the process that you have now?
So interestingly, my first sale ever was a listing. And I look back now and I can see all kinds of mistakes in so many ways that I didn't capitalize on it. I had no idea what I was doing. But other than that one listing, maybe a second one that first year, the other 12, I think I did 13 or 14 my first year, the rest were all buyers. And so working buyers, if you'll remember in 2021, was pretty crazy. So trying to navigate that while holding down a full-time job, that was interesting. So then 2022, golly, it's hard to say. I decided, that's unsustainable to work all buyers all the time, even though I still think they're more fun than listings, for the record. But I know that it's popular to go with listings, but I thought the buyers were a lot of fun. I decided 22, we're going to focus on getting more listings, and we're pretty much only going to market to listings. We're just going to lock those in, and then the buyers should come from that. So we should have a better balance if we focus only on listings. So today we're actually at about 60-40 listings buyers, which I did not expect to be able to turn around that quickly, but it worked out.
It's funny that you say, that it's most agents prefer to go the listing route, because I'm sitting here like thinking of Allie in my head, because Allie is the same way. She's like, dude, yeah. I prefer working with buyers. I have my buyer process locked down, like listings, all that thing. So it's funny to hear you say that. But okay, so when you got out of the military and you had this huge sphere of influence and you started working more with buyers, and then you shifted into focusing more on listings. Before we hit record on this, you were talking a lot about your buyer and seller consultation, I guess, your presentation. Yeah. So can you take us back to, let's even say, not that first listing that you ever had, but because you worked mainly with buyers that first year, how did you know what to do when talking to a buyer? What tools and presentations did you work on? Can you talk us through like that piece of the buyer puzzle?
Yeah. So when I came into this, remember, I was an analyst and I was a planner. So I had done a lot of high level briefings, and I felt really, I think I carried that into how I was going to be an agent and how I was going to approach my clients. So it's very important for me that after every conversation, my clients know exactly what the next steps are and why we're doing them. That's the most important part. And when they're going to happen. And then the other thing that we weave in, both in the guides that you mentioned, but then also through conversation, is the alternatives. And this goes right back to the planning process. What are our other courses of action? Not to be too military about it, but what are those other options and the pros and cons of all of it? So I heard when I first began in real estate that there was a difference between somebody who was just working the transaction versus somebody who was educating the client. And so really from the first month, I asked myself, how are you teaching them about why they're making the decisions that they're making? Because whether they're on the seller or the buyer side, we're talking thousands of dollars that each decision can cost, for the better, for the worst. So at a minimum, I want them to understand why I'm advising them on a decision. So the guides that you were mentioning, they talk through the process. I try to get ahead of some of the concerns, whether it's about a pricing concern on the seller side, or whether it's on is my offer too generous on the buyer side? It's a snapshot of the market to explain where we're at. And then of course I verbally discuss that with them as well. But these guides are really the foundation of how the process works, money that they can expect to spend up front, because that's everybody's bottom line, isn't it? And then the why behind each step of the process, so that they know what to expect. And I think that's made a big difference, so that they understand I'm not talking to you about what we're going to do right now. I have the headlights on and I can see down the path. And so I know where we're going, which is informing where we are today. So,
dude, oh my gosh, so helpful and powerful. But hypothetically, I'm listening and I'm a brand new agent and I'm like, Kate has all this laid out. She's able to advise her clients. She has all this information. Where do I get that? How do I learn those things? Like, where do I even start in building that out for myself?
So ask questions. Both ask questions from the client side. So put yourself in the buyer's shoes. If you've bought a house before I was in real estate, I'd bought 2 houses and sold 1. And those agents that represented my family, they're still top agents in our market today. I mean, I have nothing bad to say about it, but I remember questions that I had because I had never done anything like that before. And business was so far from my worldview at the time. So I was able to recall the questions that I had at the time and then think through more that they may have just now that I know what I know. And I would either answer them myself in the materials or in my, we have those talk tracks at the beginning when we haven't really internalized the details we want to share. And so I would either ask a mentor the questions and get how they would respond, or I would prepare specific talking points. There's, for every question that could come at you, there's probably 1 to 3 at least answers that you could find a way to say in one sentence, right? Because you don't want to ramble for 2 minutes like I'm doing right now, or it looks like you don't know what you're talking about. So think through the answers and find a way to say them in 1 or 2 sentences. And it just shows like, hey, I know what I'm talking about, and you deliver it with confidence, right? Because you've thought through, you already know they're going to ask you because you've thought about it. And then you can tell a story with the facts that you're trying to share with them.
I love how I feel like the best realtors, the best agents take their background, because a lot of great agents came from, it wasn't their first career field. So they take their background and they use that to be able to, it transfers at whatever background you have, like your background being an analyst, like nitty gritty, these are the pros and cons, like this is what you should, and then also briefing. And Shelby's background of doing paperwork and like getting people to care about paperwork when they didn't care about paperwork. And my background was pretty much in interviewing and investigating. So it's like also nitty gritty, but like, how do I get the why? Like, why did you do this? And how did you do it? And then you're going to go to jail. But so like whatever background you have, you're like implementing it into your business. So as you are taking all of this information, like you're thinking back as far as the questions that you went through, that you had when you were going through it, which is perfect. Because again, like so many agents haven't even purchased their own property. I think, this is my personal opinion, how can you advise someone else to purchase theirs when you've never done it yourself? Like, I'm going to get heat for that. I don't care.
But you can. I would say that they can. The more you understand how it works, and you break it down, then whether you rent right now or you haven't bought or not, because maybe it isn't the right time, but you still understand how it works. But you just have to be that much more thoughtful in how you approach it.
Like 10x more thoughtful. Like you have to think about questions. Like if you've never gone through it, you don't have the emotional pain, like the emotional fear, the nervousness of like, oh, should I pull out of this contract? Should I not? My question is more so like organization. As you're like remembering all these questions and you're working with other clients and they have questions, where are you organizing all of this like tactically for new agents? Because I'm sure that like organization is a huge issue with agents, right? Like they're like, oh, this and that and that. And that's like life of an entrepreneur, brain of a CEO. Where did you compile everything to be able to then put it into a nice package? Thank you for listening. Out of respect for your time, we want to make this show as valuable as possible for you. So if you have any feedback on how we can improve, please let us know. DM us at Allie the Agent and The Shelby Show.
So it looks a little different on the buyer and the seller side. So I'll start with the buyer side. Most of, just by virtue of doing business here and having folks come into the now Fort Liberty area, most of my buyer intake consultations were over the phone. So I could sit here just a little bit insecure with an entire list of every point that I want to make sure that I ask them right in front of me and fill the questions out. So I would detail every question that I want to ask them. Everything from, just, hey, tell me your situation. Tell me your story. What are you trying to do? And then sometimes there would be natural questions that emerge, but I would try to stick to the script as much as possible so that I could cover it all. And by the time I'm done, there's a good 1 to 2 page interview written out as I'm typing while they're at, everything from the location where they're looking at, the pricing. Oh, you're not pre-approved yet. What kind of monthly budget are you shooting for? The type of house, everything that they're looking for. And it's all in one document. Now I do store that in our CRM, and every contact has a note attached to their file so that for every fact-finding conversation we have, I'm able to record that in their file. But when I was first starting out, it was a Word doc that was then saved to I would have a buyer folder in my cloud drive that I could pull up on my phone, pull up on the iPad, pull up on the home computer. It's all synced. And then inside of each buyer, they'd have their own file. So that's the way I started it before everything was really digitized into one place and system that, for me, my brokerage provides. So that's how I started. But then on the seller side, I had an interview sheet that I actually took with them or took with me to meet with them so they could actually see. And I would preface it by saying there's a lot that we need to cover. So I am going to work off this sheet just to make sure that we get it all, because I don't want to harass you later when I forget something, right? Just to make it look like it's for them, for me not to bother them later. But I would have all the interview, same types of questions that you need to know for a seller up front. And then I would take, after we're done with that initial conversation, and we go walk through the home and we make a game plan of what they need to do to prepare their home. I leave a sheet behind with them and I take a photo of the game plan. And I can tell you what that looks like too, but and then that goes into the seller file. So the process is a little different for both buyers and sellers, but really I think the mechanics are the same, that there's a detailed and intentional interview up front. And then I store that in their own file, and then I can reference it because it's all cloud synced.
When you're meeting with the buyers, is that in person? Because you said listing.
Most of the time it's not.
Okay.
Right.
Where
most of the time the buyers are on the phone and listings are in person. Sorry, go ahead.
Dude, I think it's so cool that you said that, because that was my exact same process. I started out on a Word document, on the phone, I would take my phone, I would put it on speaker, and I would put it in my bra because I didn't have actual headphones or anything. And I was just typing the whole time that they were talking on a Word document or a Google Sheet.
Dude, right.
Yes. And later down the road, I was like, oh, CRMs, I guess that's what most people do. Oops.
Yeah. Well, and you can even do it. The truth is, as long as you build in time after that appointment to package what you discovered, what you took from them into your system, you don't have to do it from the system at that moment. So that CRM, I have an app on my phone. I can write the note on my phone, but that would be weird if I'm just on my phone during the whole appointment, like for a seller when we're in person. So I'll work it on paper, something bigger on a clipboard, something they might expect to see. And then I build in time that very same day, if not early the next day, to take 15 minutes and type it up and synthesize it with actionable next steps.
Dude, we are seriously twinning so hard right now. I would do the same thing. It would either be later that day or first thing the next morning. Or if it was on a Zoom call, I usually block out 15 minutes after the call just to go through all of the notes that I was typing up and organize it. And then send a follow-up where it's hey, just following up. Here's what we talked about. Here's the way ahead. Here's expectations for you and for me. So I feel like you're my soul sister.
I felt that way when we first spoke. I was just we think so much the same. The way you communicate, both with agents and with, as I would imagine, with your clients, just in these bullet points. If you saw one of my emails, I'd like to think it would look a lot like yours.
Dude, I want to see it.
It's very good.
I want to be in your inbox.
Yeah.
I love
the
you.
Bold words to emphasize, and we got breaks, action items are next. Dude, I think we think a lot.
I legit want to see it all. And I know that, we just ask people for one nugget, but I'm like, yo, Kate, can you upload your entire computer?
But it is a system, and that continuity, I just want to say this too, that communication, I think has a lot to do with my client retention. I feel like they walk away knowing, not only did I listen because it's all captured and I remember, and I'm able to reference something I heard them say later, but I'd like to think they're not left wondering, what do we do next? And how and why, because that's all wrapped up for them as an immediate follow-up. And so that security, remember, whether they're buying or selling, this is a huge move for them. And if they're as clueless as I was before, they know that they have to trust you 100%. And so being able to understand that you're actually thinking through, it just shows that you've got their back and that you're a partner versus, just a consultant that they go to transactionally.
And you can also tell when you're sending these emails out or when you're over the phone with buyers or sellers, if they're not used to, I call it homework. Cause I'm people don't really understand all the time, action items. I'm okay, my homework is I'm going to give you this and your homework is to do this.
Yes.
And sometimes they're you're giving me homework. And I'm okay, this might not be a good fit. That's immediate way to weed, I'm hey, if I'm going to be doing stuff, I also need your assistance. I can't just sell your house alone. So yes, your homework is to remove the wasps, like I will give you the quotes, remove the wasps so we can even get in the house, and so that's like, I think a great way to weed out and just work with your customers, people that speak your language. So
yeah. And those dates, Allie, are so important, like what you're saying for homework. So you give them the homework, but then we say, okay, how long do you think that'll take you? In a week or two? Okay, cool. I'm going to check in with you on the 15th to see how that went. And if not, we'll get someone in there together because I do know a couple of people. And so then they're able to see that we're on a timeline, and that makes a difference to them too.
Oh yeah.
Dude, this is twice definitely. Now that earlier you said, with your buyer consultations, it's not, and even the listing stuff too, where it's not like telling them things, it was asking them a series of questions. And I heard something recently, that selling is asking, not telling. And you just did it again, like a little, how long do you think that would take you? As opposed to, and by having those people think through and answer on their own accord, as opposed to being told specific things, that's some psychological in there too, Kate.
You're doing it. They committed it themselves. I'm not arm twisting them. Yeah, I think that's I think it's safe to say that pretty much every decision that I come to with a client, buyer or seller, is prompted by a question. And it varies, but the idea being, this is your transaction, right? This is your purchase. This is your sale. I'm not going to tell you, even when I'm recommending offer terms or something, everything comes down with a question. Are you comfortable with that? What were you thinking about this? Right. So I think that's really a big part of it.
A lot of newer agents, and I guess even intermediate agents too, struggle with managing expectations, like setting their ground rules up from the front, from the start. How do you do that? What exactly do you tell? We'll start with buyers. So in that way, that you and the buyers are working like completely in sync together to help them buy a house. And then we'll go into sellers.
So I'll tell them, first of all, what the process looks like. And especially in the market here, at least in this area, we're still competitive in the price points where most of my buyers are buying. So I make it very clear to them, and this is part of, I think, my value proposition and my commitment, that we are going to get you into the home within 24 hours of identifying that you're interested. And then that's usually within 24 hours of the listing hitting the market, because I try to be very, very aggressive for my buyers. And so that's an expectation that they can count on from me. So on the flip side, then it's very natural and I typically do this at the end of the conversation. I'll say something like, okay, so now you know what this next process is going to look like. Here's when you can expect to hear from me. Every business day, all business hours, you'll typically get a response back from me within 30 minutes to an hour, unless I'm in a meeting or something that's got me away from my phone. I'm also available to talk or to sync up from about 8 a.m. until, for me, I cut it off at about 7 o'clock. And I say, really, that's also because you don't want to hear all the dinner time chaos, because I've got 2 kids and it can get crazy in this house. So I'll set those parameters so they understand where that time is going. I'm also only recently trying to pull Sundays off of my work calendar. It used to be 7 days a week because I'd rather work in spurts every day versus, really, really long hours for just a few days a week. But now I'm trying to rest on Sundays. And I don't think I've done that successfully yet at any week, but we're getting there. But what I am telling them is you can definitely expect to hear back from me on Saturday. And if I have any kind of events or I'm taking a trip, you're going to know in advance. And so it's just important to let them know how long it's going to take them to hear back from you. If yours is 3 or 4 hours, say that, right? That way you're keeping your promises. The more promises you keep, the more they can trust you. And the more they trust you, the more they like you. So, set your parameters for how long realistically that they can expect to hear back from you, and then keep it. And the same thing goes for your work hours, so that if they do text you at 10 o'clock on a Friday night, they don't expect to hear back from you. So that's on the buyer side.
And probably those same expectations on the seller side as well. And Allie, did you have something?
Yeah, on the seller side, I would love to go through. I feel like that's where a lot of agents get hung up, right? Like whether they form their own habits for buyers and they somehow make it work, they can streamline it into a process. On the listing side, it's a little bit different, where I think you have to be more prepared. You can't just go into a house and just be like, all right, well, like this is like, how we do business, and I'll talk to you tomorrow. You'll hear through about, the transaction throughout the way. So walk us through, you are going to a seller's house, a potential seller, not a client yet, a presentation. I would love to hear, not the full presentation, but like the general overview of what that looks like. Like, do you look at the house first, or do you go and like talk numbers first, et cetera? And then and then how you use those like not the buyer, but the seller guides in this case. At what point do you send them?
So before I even go to the seller's house, I've done at least a general CMA to find the range. And I won't leave that behind. What I'll leave behind is the 1004 MC. That's something that we have in at least the Fayetteville market MLS, where we can show not only what homes that have recently sold for, but including their price per square foot, everything that's active, anything that would be in a comparable area and of a comparable type of home, I can show that to them, right? So that I've got the range that where the home could possibly sell, depending on what we find during the walkthrough. But in my head, I've also got, all right, the range is 125 to 150 a square foot. And when I go into this house, I'm going to know if this is a wow house or if this is a house. And then just probably off the top of my head, I'm going to make some estimations in that range, right? So if it's 2,000 square, I'll just know kind of where that falls. And that's the homework I've done before walking in. So then when I go to the house, I have not sent anything in advance. And part of that is I have a digital version of the guide, but I want to drive the conversation as much as possible. And I feel like number one, I'll be leaving a physical copy behind, so I don't really need to send a digital copy. But I want them to know that I've got this covered. So I really don't send anything in advance. There's different ways to think about that. But I walk in and I have a manila envelope, and in it is a printed full color, spiral bound, plastic covered. So probably nicer end marketing than I really have to do. Version of the seller guide that's about 20 pages. And then in that seller guide is it's a general snapshot of what the market looks like, thinking, year long. And you'll see it in the nuggets. I'll say, here's some of the trends that we're seeing this year. Maybe a comment about interest rates, when PCS season might typically be, whatever. And that's printed in advance because I have 10 or 15 copies on hand at all times. And so that's in the manila envelope, along with a blank copy of the game plan. The game plan is about 10 blank lines, which are action items that need to be done. Paint, landscaping, deep clean, whatever. And then backwards planning the dates. Okay, you want to go active on August 15th. I know you want to close by August 15th. I know your home's competitive. We backwards plan when they need to be under contract, when they need to hit the market, so when they need to be photo ready, right? And then that way there's no question to them about the timeline. And then they've got that long to get the game plan done. And I'll even say, and they're like, I got you covered here. You're doing this cleaning yourself. I've got the painter, et cetera. We'll just plan that out. There's a blank copy of that in this envelope, then along with the market stats. So that's what I bring with me to the meeting.
Dude, I think, well, first of all, that's the spiral binder thing. Like, that's what's up, girl. You looking fancy. I love that. And yeah, no, I am super curious. I'm sure Allie is too, about like, so, okay, this is what you're walking in with in your hands. Right. They open the door, lead us through it. Yo, real quick, this podcast is not free. Cost of admission is sharing with a buddy who'd benefit or throwing it on your Instagram story. Tag us. We'll reshare that.
Yes. Okay. So as we introduce ourselves, I always ask if it's okay if I come in. I don't just walk in like I'm supposed to be there, even though we have an appointment. And now I will have the seller walk me through the home. And as they're walking me through the home, I didn't mention this, but I've also got a clipboard with blank paper. And I'm writing down everything that they are saying, everything that I'm observing as well. This needs work. Typically on the right side of the paper is a list of things that need to be done. And then just all over the rest of the paper, depending, it's like a word cloud, the bigger the words, the more important it is throughout as we walk through. And then I'm asking them too, what's your favorite thing about the home? What if you were buying this home again, what's something you didn't know, but you do know now, both good and bad? What is that, right? And then I might even ask them, what we call like peripherals. What are some of the things about the neighborhood that you like? What are some of the surprises that you may have had? Any issues that you're aware of? So all of that about the home is captured in that walkthrough. It takes, depending on how big the house is, 15 to 20 minutes. And then I'm just more armed to come sit down at the table. When we sit down at the table, the first thing that I talk through with them, other than getting a couple of personal details that you would for the interview, the first thing I ask them is about their closing timeline, because I don't want to start talking price before I understand their timeline and their priorities. I'll ask things like, what are your priorities when it comes to repair work that needs to be done versus, being able to sell quickly, even if you compromise a few dollars. So I'll understand that. And then I'll say, all right, let's talk about the market. And then we're going to talk the price. And I'll walk them through that 1004 MC. I'll say, realistically, you can see here that the price per square foot range is here to here. Based on the condition of these homes, I can send you the addresses if you want to look it up. You're falling right in the middle. That prices you, and I've already done some of the quick math in my head, that prices you at about this figure. What do you think about that? And based on their answer, if they want it to go up, I'll say, well, here's some things we could do to get you toward the top of the range, right? And then the last thing I tell them is this. Okay, so we've got a game plan. I've gone through everything that I marked on my page, and right there, I fill it out with them at the table and make our commitments. And then, and I'll tell them, I reevaluate every price the days before it goes on the market, like hit the market on a Thursday. So Monday, Tuesday, I am looking at what else is on the market. That's your competition, right? So that could drive you maybe a few $1,000s lower. Or if there's been a recent sale that was off market and I didn't see that it was pending, I'm going to revisit all of that the days before. So that always gives them the comfort that I'm not underpricing them. I'm really trying to get them as much as we can. And, after we wrap up the game plan, that's pretty much it. And I tell them the next thing that they can expect to hear from me, which is typically an email. We're summarizing everything we did.
Do you, or at what point is there a seller's net sheet involved?
Part of the listing agreement.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
so then, yep. So I send it all as part of the documents to sign. Now, when we talk price, I will do some phone calculations about what they can expect to net. And part of this is, again, that conversation at that table, the first time that I've been in the home, that pricing discussion is still very fluid. I don't want them to get hung up on a profit number because I net sheeted right there. There's still a lot that could change depending on how well of a job they do preparing, depending on how much time we have before the active date. So I really try not to focus too much on walk-away profit until after all the paperwork is set and we have a solid plan moving forward.
Okay. So at this point, to recap, I showed up, I'm at my house and you're the agent and you showed up. I opened the door. We did a tour for 20 minutes. You're asking me questions that I probably don't even realize are really important. I think you're just making conversation, but you're writing it all down and compiling a plan on paper and in your head. So then we go and we sit down at the table. And that's when you go through that. Actually, is that when you go through your 3-ring?
Yeah.
When does that happen?
So thank you for reminding me about that. I actually do not dive into that at the table. What I'll say is, so on page 9, for instance, you can revisit this. This is where it's going to talk about the types of expenses that you can expect to come out of your profit. So if you're going to sell at $400,000, it's going to show you the math on what you can expect to see as a bottom line in general, but I'm going to get a more detailed breakdown to you in an official form. And then I'll also say, and I dog ear the page and I open up the binder and I almost like leave it open on that page. And I say, this is your checklist to prepare for showings and for your photo walkthrough. And I'll pull out a couple of key things that I always see forgotten, like put the pet things away or light bulb tones, cool or warm, but not both. Little things like that, that I'll flag for them so that, yes, we get through the game plan and then we're 2 days out from photos or showings and they're like, okay, now what do I do? There's a better chance I'll walk into a home that's been prepared for that moment, not just fixed up, because there is a difference.
And what kind of common objections are you getting and how do you handle them?
Price. Is I think the biggest concern when they say, well, I really was thinking, I'll just stay with this example of 400. I really wanted to go with 425. So I'll say, I'll do the quick math on my phone. Here's where this would land you at a price per square foot. And here's what you can see in the range. Now, if there's a way that could fit in the range, I would say there's kind of two paths here. If there's a way that their home could sell for that amount, I would say, here's what you're going to have to do to make your home ready for that. And if I know, just knowing the home, that the cost to do those changes is going to outweigh the benefit they get from choosing that price, I'll let them know. Hey, you're going to raise the price $5,000, but you're going to spend $7,000 to get you there, right? Just some quick table math to talk about that. But if I know that there's no way they can sell the house at that price, then I'll start talking about the effect that time has on a listing. So when you have a home that has sat on the market for more than 2 weeks at this price point in this market, it starts to look stigmatized. And chances are you'll have to lower the price by $5,000 or $10,000 and then offer a concession on top of that if your home's not competitive and a buyer comes and brings a request for closing costs. So now you have underpriced yourself more than you would if we just said it right here. And so I'll talk them through the pros and cons of that. And it comes down to their priority, time versus money, really.
I like that a lot. And then what about, I said that we would role play. Well, whatever. It's still the same question overall, but my brother is also a realtor. Sorry, I didn't mention it. And he said that he would do it at a lower cost. Can you match that?
I would ask what his brother's going to do for him. And then, and if ultimately, here's the thing, I just got to preface this by saying, I really don't reduce my commission for anything. Included in my commission is a service like the full move out clean. So they get moved out, they're leaving stuff behind, everything's a hot mess. I cover the cost of their move out clean so that it's an easy exit for them and they don't have to worry about at least that factor. And then there's also the fact that, I'm answering the phone within an hour of them reaching out. I have noticed sometimes that family members can approach a transaction maybe more relaxed than they would when they're serving a regular client. So you know your brother best, and the option is completely yours. But it's just something to think about. I don't want to say you get what you pay for when you're talking about a family member, but that's what I'm implying through my response.
Nice. So then you wrap up the listing, you get the listing. And what happens after that? Like, what are the processes? Who else is on your team to help you take it from the listing presentation where you killed it and then all the way to close?
So the first thing we do typically is that night or even the next morning, go back, put all the notes in the CRM, and I assign myself digital tasks. So these tasks will come up in my CRM that I need to do that are all aligned to this listing coordination. And those are on any of those game plan action items that I know I'm responsible for. And then there's a date by which I check to make sure that the client's doing their side of it as well. So we still have time to save it if they're not and they got overwhelmed. So I will put all of that into the CRM. I tell my TC or admin, we're actually in a bit of a team transition right now because I'm setting up for some growth. But it was a TC, it's about to be an admin, to go ahead and prepare the listing packet. And that has, of course, all of the contractual agreements and disclosures, but I've also got an info sheet that we upload with things like utility costs and everything a buyer might need to know, how they want to receive due diligence, just all the practical things that we're going to ask them eventually. We try to cover that up front. And then at the same time, we are drafting the incomplete listing in the MLS. So immediately they're on our board as a full-time listing that's upcoming, even if it's not for another 3 or 4 months. I have them sign the listing agreement and everything so that it's just a matter of either coordinating contractors, whether that's expected or not, getting those photos, and then launching on the start date. But sorry, I'll go back. After we do that kickoff of starting the packet and the CRM, I always send an email to the client, Shelby style, which means that it's bulleted and bolded with key action items and dates to them, summarizing our conversation and when they can expect to see communication back from me.
Okay, totally makes sense. Kill the listing appointment, then you go back and you do all of the back end to make sure that you stay on track, the client stays on track, the paperwork is complete, and then you are live on the market. And I have a question about that. Earlier in the example, you said you're going live on a Thursday. Was that just an example you used, or do you always go live on Thursdays? If it's always, can you explain your reasoning for that?
Yeah, I try Thursdays. I think when we talk, the biggest thing that I try to convey to a seller is that the more time you are on market, the more risk you have to your profit. And I think by going active on a Thursday, and that's anytime Thursday, it could be 6 p.m., but active on a Thursday, then you give everybody a chance to see it on Friday. And we always hold an open house. Honestly, at almost any price point, I hold an open house like that Saturday or Sunday. And then we know that between all of the social media marketing, we've made them a landing page, we've open housed, we've done all of that. If by Sunday there's not an offer, that is an indicator, maybe not the only one, that we need to adjust the strategy, which is built into the strategy in the first place. So we just go really, really hard for 4 days. And that Thursday start is important. In our market right now, we could afford a Monday to Tuesday start, but only at certain price points. And you're still not going to get that same mass interest effect that you would on the first weekend.
The reason why I asked that is just because that's exactly what we used to do. And I wanted to know, like when I was doing a bunch of listings in Fayetteville, literally the exact same process, always did a Thursday, people see it Friday, push, Saturday, Sunday. Question on the push. Are you doing the open houses yourself, or do you have other agents who are doing that for you? What does that look like?
Above a certain price point. If it's over 200, I'll do it. Pretty much every open house that I have ever done, I have closed an additional sale from that. Whether that's a seller who was in the neighborhood, who that saw what we were doing and they wanted to talk more, or whether it was by a buyer. So if it's over 200, I will do the open house. If it's not, then I'll invite a newer agent or another agent, whoever's hustling out there, to go do it as the same. The other thing I like to do is go market to the neighborhood, especially if it's in my farm. I'm knocking on all the doors to let them know that we have an open house, not because I want them to buy the home, but because I want them to see us working. So
I love it. There's so much opportunity with each listing, and in the beginning, I know before we hit record too, we were talking about how so much of your business came from referrals and sphere of influence, but that sounds great. But what people think most of the time when they hear that is she's not doing anything and leads are just falling in her lap. But in reality, it's like every piece of business that you're getting is an opportunity to push on social media and have every eye who follows you understand that you're out there slinging deals. And it's an opportunity for you to knock on every door and to do an open house and to follow up, bring those people into your sphere and continuing nurturing them over time. So it's not like you're not doing marketing,
Oh yeah. I guess the thing is, when you really lock in the trust and the confidence in your client, those referrals are a result of you hustling. It looks different. I'm not cold calling people. I tried that strategy for a while. It's just not for me. I'm not cold calling. I'm not buying any leads at this time. But ultimately, the hustle that I did through the open house, or just being very intentional and putting weeks worth of effort into how we're presented in that $20 spiral bound notebook, which is a ridiculous cost if you're in real estate, but that $20 could lock in 10,000 more. So it's worth it. So that's more what the hustle looks like in a way than just working too hard. And that's the referrals are a testament to that. So it's still just a different kind of marketing and lead gen.
What other kind of process do you have in order to continue loving on your past clients, to have them remember you, keep you top of mind, to keep that business going?
Apple listeners, this short pause is to ask you for a review. Here's how to do it. Back out of the specific episode, go to the page where you see all the episodes, scroll down, keep scrolling. Perfect. Now tap those 5 stars. Thank you so much. Back to the show.
We have a couple of things that we do, and they're all regular and calendared so that I don't forget, because time flies. The first thing is we send a monthly email, and it's very important to me that this is value added. We actually put a lot of time into it. We scrub every current event that's happening from here to Raleigh, and we capture that on our website. Another way to drive organic traffic to the website. But because it's relevant, we've got like a 90% open on our emails, even though they're going out every month. And so that's a signal that the clients that I'm talking to want to hear what we have to say, right? So we do send out those monthly emails with a little bit of both a personal update if the team has changed, and a market update. And then, so that's monthly. Once more, maybe twice, and I'm shooting for 4 times a year, we host events. So I have an annual Pumpkins and Pictures client appreciation event where I ask nothing of them whatsoever except to show up. They can take as many pumpkins as they want from Gillis Hill Farm, and obviously the tab's on me. And we'll have a professional photographer there getting a couple of like a mini photo shoot session for them. So that gives me a reason to follow up afterwards. And so we just really pour, there's charcuterie cups to go. We really focus on that client appreciation event so that they understand, that we're not just asking from them. We want to give to them and give them a chance to get out in the community. And then my goal is that they'll eventually be like, oh, we'll just get our fall photos at Kate's thing. That's the goal. Eventually we'll get there. And then we have a serve event every year. We're actually going to do one this weekend where we've got our clientele. We've opened up the invitation to our entire clientele to come out and serve a meal to the homeless on Saturday. And so the team will be there. Our families will be there, as well as really a bunch of our clients on Saturday as well. So I'm excited for that. So those 2 events combined with our monthly, and then I've got a HomeBot subscription for them, updating them on what matters, which is their home value. I think we've got that pretty much on lock at this point. And it's really a set it and forget it at this point.
I love this. I have so many like sub questions for each of those categories. So starting with the monthly email, 90% open rate is amazing. What is your subject line? Because without like a good subject line, people are not going to open it, especially if it's repeat, every month. So what are you putting in that subject line, and how are you leveraging the overall? Because I'm sure it's not you looking up what is happening in Fayetteville in this market this weekend, what's happening on Saturday. What's your leverage? It is, oh, dang. And what's your subject line? Okay.
I tried to have my TC do this. It did not work out as well. My sister's coming onto my team as my admin / really partner. And so now she sees the world like I do. So she can look for events that I feel like are relevant to both me and my clients. Listen, I'm the hardest person to market to and in the world. I'll just say I don't open emails. I delete and block everything. You cannot market to me. So I think what would make me want to open an email from somebody that I know who is in business. And so the last one that we sent out with the current events, there was a big, what do they call it? Hot air balloon festival in Raleigh. And so I would say, and also once or twice I'll send out like a barcode for free coffee. So I'll say something like free coffee and hot air balloons or something like that. And it'll say like, yes, please on there. I don't know, something fun, whatever would make me open it. And so that's what I'll send them. And then the body is I try to be very, very, if not short, very direct and to the point about the update, maybe a few sentences about how we're doing so that they feel like there's a personal connection there. I mean, it's genuine. And then we link them to the website for events. And then at the top, you have them scroll all the way down for what's valuable to them. So if it's free coffee, don't forget to scan the barcode at the bottom of this email for your free coffee. I hope you have an awesome day. And so then that causes them to read all the way through the email. And then I think we're at about like 40% click. So that tells me maybe some people don't care about the events, but it's enough. And yeah, that's what's in the email.
And are you repurposing the events that you're hosting? Are you using like photos from there into the emails? Like, hey, by the way, you missed it, but last month we had our pumpkins and pictures. Or are you doing that as well?
That is the concept. At the time when we did that event, I was not as diligent on this side, but yes, that is part of it. And then we also have our events on the webpage too, so that is getting amplified. But normally what I like to do is send a personal text afterwards to everybody, which takes some time. But it'll say, hey, we're sorry we missed you. Or it's, hey, here are the photos we took for you guys too. So that's how we'll repurpose it. But it's not always in the emails.
And do you text through your CRM or is that on your actual phone?
Right now, it's on my phone. I don't feel good about, I have a Twilio subscription and it's in my CRM. I don't feel good about transitioning my Sphere, my database, to a Twilio. I just don't feel good about it. So I'm still working through what that looks like scaled, because I think I'm at max capacity of a database that I can continue to service personally like that. That's a question I'm working through.
I was just going to say that's one of the consistent, like you work and you build until you hit a ceiling. and then you break through and then you work and you build until you hit the next ceiling. And I feel like that's first of all, a really great ceiling to hit your own personal capacity, but also like a consistently challenging one to overcome. Because, you have that personal connection through your personal phone number, and you never want those people who know you, love you, and trust you to think that they've turned into a number.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I don't have the code for that yet. I think that's our next season.
I'd also love to talk about budget, because 4 times a year you're hosting events and they're not free. It's an expense for agents that have never dished out money into pouring back into their past clients that already like them and know them and trust them, or maybe don't realize that you can partner with your local lender and have them sponsor the HomeBot subscription, where a lot of lenders do this and agents don't realize, like, hey, I have 10 extra codes, but no realtor has reached out to me, or, whatever it is. What does your budget look like for events? And are you sharing it with a partner, a vendor?
Right now, I'm not sharing it with a partner or a vendor. To be completely honest, I just wanted a bit more control. And again, I don't want people to feel advertised to when it's client appreciation. And for a sponsor to sponsor, there's a chance they'd want to be marketed as well. And I just don't want to do that when it's truly about the client. So I budget it from the get-go up front. Like when I'm doing my business planning for the year, it's a line item. If Pumpkins and Pictures ran me $1,000 last year, then that is a line item. If every serve event is $500, then it's in there. So I'm planning for that as part of an expense. And then, as that adds up, you just start to think, okay, well, now I need to sell 2 houses a month instead of 1 in order to pay the bills. It just becomes a business expense. Plus, I always try to keep in mind, if it's tax deductible, then I'm getting a 25% discount. So that helps me also just think it's worth doing. And I think you don't realize until you've done it at a high level, as in you go all out, how much of a return it makes. I can't, just off the top of my head, I can think of probably 5 sales that have come from one event. It's a 25 times multiplier, but you have to have the courage to step out. Don't cheapskate on it, budget it right. Don't sink yourself by it, and then nurture folks and let them know that you do it because you care. You have to follow up so that they understand. And then you're the first person they're going to think of when the time comes.
And to get this clear, I maybe have misunderstood when you're advertising for the event and you send a text out after, are you sending the text out to everyone that you invited, like those that didn't come, saying, sorry, missed you? Or are you sending out the text only to those like who took the photos that you're following up on there?
And nice. So wow. I know who didn't go, and I'll say, hey, sorry, we missed you. I know it's been a crazy time and I look forward to seeing you at the next one. Just so people don't start to feel like, well, I haven't gone to any of the events, so I should just bow out of this connection, because people will. I'm one of them. And so make sure that that stays warm. And then the people who did go to the event, it was so great to see you. If I don't have photos yet, then I'll tell them they'll get it in a couple of days. But then I'll make sure to email them the photos separately. So it's multiple touches that you're giving your clients from one event. Because remember, you sent it out in the email, you texted them just real quick the week before to remind them, hey, if you have an RSVP, please go ahead and do that. So you're getting a lot of contact. And I can't tell you how many people I've caught up with too through the process and learned about what's happening in their life. So it's just the one thing I will never strip from my business, no matter what path we take.
How do you actually know who went? Because people are terrible at RSVPing. And do you know everyone's faces so well that you could remember and track, or was there like a sign in as they entered?
I remember everybody. But you have to remember too, I'm only in my 3rd year. So there is a chance, if I've sold 70 houses, how many of those are sellers? How many didn't come? I don't know exactly what this looks like scaled, but I do feel like I will not be able to scale if I don't do this well now. I'll figure out what that looks like. But right now I do try to remember. I have a Google form where everybody RSVPs. And so, I'll have a record there, but if someone else shows up, I guess there's a chance I'd miss the follow-up, but probably not. I'd probably remember seeing them. Also, if they make sure to get photos with the photographer, then I've got a record that way.
Yeah, I was thinking like in the future, there might be just one camera that just facially recognizes everybody, and then that's all you need. We'll get there one day.
It's an app, yeah.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
So, and then a question on Homebot, and then I want to ask where you're going because you mentioned that you're scaling now. So I want to talk about that. But before, Homebot. In my local area, Homebot is completely incorrect. Homebot will make the seller think that their home is worth a lot more. And then that conversation ends up being a disappointment. Like, thank you so much for reaching out. Your home is actually not worth that much. How does that, is it reflective of your area as well? Is that what you're seeing too?
Yes and no. I feel like at the more common price points, it's closer to accurate. At the bigger price points where the market interest really drives the price even more so than just a need, it can be very inaccurate. So when I first set everybody up on Homebot, I checked all their values and what it was saying, and I corrected them so that at least at a minimum, as it's adding appreciation through the years, our start point was correct. The other thing that I'll do is periodically, especially if I see that somebody is there's a lot of traffic coming through the email updates from Homebot, they're really interested, I'll go in there and I'll correct it. Just so that I know, hey, they're looking at their home value out, and I'll just do a quick CMA, do some guesstimates based on how I imagine the home's condition is, and I'll go in and correct it myself. Again, very hands-on, but I mean, it works for us, and I just block time for it.
I like that. Yeah. Because otherwise you're just like juggling a lot of questions, being like, oh my God, is my home really worth $100,000 more? I purchased it 2 months ago. No, that's off of an algorithm that it does not work out here anymore. So, okay, I want to shift into what's next for you. Earlier on the episode, you said you're setting yourself up for growth. Those were your words. What is this growth? Tell us.
So I just hired my first full-time administrative partner. She has family, so I feel like we can grow really exponentially very quickly. We just kind of think the same. We just see the same value in, activities. So right now, I'm trying to work through what that looks like. We've got a strategy. I've always had a really good intention of having a marketing and lead gen strategy. We've got a farm, and we're going to do community events, and we're going to do client appreciation. It's going to look like 12 emails a year. And, it's like very mathematical, but I couldn't do it because it was always either the transactions or that I couldn't follow through. So now that I have her in the seat, that's been the big push is, updating our swag and professionalizing our signs and just anything else that we needed to really touch up. We will start doing a lot more of the local community events and being present there, hopefully coming kind of over the top again in our presentation to show our style, our standards. And then we're going to start focusing on farming, which I've never really done consistently. We've got 2 areas of town where we're going to get started there. So I'm excited about the potential. I can't imagine that we won't grow through those activities done consistently over about 6 months, and then we'll reevaluate. But then I've recently had several folks come to talk about starting a team. And so I'm marinating on that right now. We haven't really decided for sure, but that'll probably happen at some point in the near to midterm.
Dude, I am so excited for you because there is like nothing better than, okay, we all struggle with this. In the beginning, when we're hiring, you usually just hire someone who's like as inexpensive as possible, who can just barely get the job done, but you're constantly having that piece of your mind that's never letting go. Because, and I call them, when I talk to people, like I call it a minion versus a brain, which I don't know if that's correct to put on the internet, but you can hire a minion who just does the little tasks, or you can hire someone who can critically think and actually view the world through your eyes. What would Kate do in this scenario? And then you can really trust them to make decisions on your behalf, which is like, that I'm so excited for you.
It's a game changer, Toby. She's been on with me for 2 months, and we have progressed 9 months in 2 months. I'm just like, I don't know if I'm ready for the speed at which this is going to start bolting forward. So
you're ready. I'm ready for you. I'm really excited.
Thanks.
And dude, I feel like we're already at an hour, and I feel like Allie and I could both ask you a million more questions, but it is almost time to wrap up. But before we hit into the wrap up, is there any words of wisdom or any pieces that you wanted to touch on that maybe we didn't hit yet?
I think I just have kind of 3 things. If I had to sum up the principles that drive the approach that I take, the first one is immediate and thorough communication. And we've already seen that a little bit in what I described. The other thing is do everything that you do at a high level, which leads to the third, and that is you can't do everything at a high level. So pick 2 or 3 things to do very, very well and blow it out of the water. Look at the best person that you know who does that and do better. And then if you're doing that consistently every single day and you're showing up, and then you are creating that trust by being immediately responsive with your clients and any of your teammates, you cannot help but see the success that's going to come from that.
Love it. Okay, we got to hit with a wrap up. So what is your favorite app or tool?
Okay, sorry. I need to think about that because it's Command, and I don't think I'm allowed to say that on the show.
Right. Kate,
you're allowed to say anything on the show.
You're allowed to literally say anything.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Now we don't even talk about that.
Okay. Wait, what'd you say?
Okay, what I was going to say is on the very first episode, the first 2 episodes, Allie and I shared like the world's worst show moments like ever. So we set the stage with anything goes. So please tell us about Command.
Okay. Yeah, no, the reason I love it is because I can do everything and I really can do everything in one spot. I can do all of my social media paid advertisements. All of my clients are in there, every email, anything that I need to do is there in Command. So that's why I love it. I bolt on little things to it, but I don't really have to pay for it other than fees. I guess those count. And so it's not extra in my business, but it covers 90% of what I need, at least the iteration that it is today. So that's why I love it.
What events are you going to this year?
Mega Agent Camp, which is a bid in diving into the Tom Ferry value system. And I want to go to one of their big conferences.
I'm headed to Tom Ferry Summit next month, and I'm like super excited. I'm obsessed with Tom Ferry.
Kate, how can we or listeners help you in your business?
I would love to be just part of any kind of masterminds, investor meetups that you've got. That's the biggest thing for me is networking, team building. I think that's the most important part that I don't have as much right now with where we're at.
Awesome. And Kate, again, thank you so much for coming on the show. For those that are PCSing to Fort Bragg or want to get to know, you said you might be growing a team and an agent wants to join a team out there. Where can they find you? How can they get a hold of you?
So on social, the handle's Legacy Realty Group NC. Same, that's the domain for the website too, but it's much better if you just text me, 910-644-0746. I'll answer everything within 30 minutes.
I love it. This is like the Domino's, like get 30 minutes or your pizza money back. But the guarantees are so important. Like I actually have a guarantee that no one has ever used is I'll help you buy your house. And if you don't like it, I will sell it for free. No one's ever used it, but guarantees in businesses are so important. Yeah. So that's it for today. So they know how to find you. Thanks for leaving your number. One day you're going to get a ton of texts. We're going to get big here. So if you want to hang out with us, me and Shelby, we are Allie the Agent and the Shelby Show on Instagram, or go on theagentgoldmine.com to find a lot of nuggets from today's show. Thank you so much for dropping them for the audience. And that's it for today. So listeners, please be a bro and share this show. See ya.
Thanks so much for listening, dude. If you want the golden nugget that this guest provided, see the show notes or just go straight to theagentgoldmine.com. That's where we keep all our resources for you. Till next time.